All
Wow,
right. Yeah,
that was deep. Like,
that was really fun. Very
yeah.
nice ride with Mila Maxwell, author, firefighter, mother, wife, sister, daughter. And we got it
Very
all.
insightful human person. Like, the conversation goes a lot of different directions, and her look on life is just feels really good. It's like putting honey in your tea.
That's perfect. So with that, subscribe. Hit us up if you want anything at all. Just hit us up.
Yeah. Maybe you want to be on the show. Maybe you know Dave Chappelle and can get him on the show.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, come on. And
support Blast, support the Compton Cowboys, and be very, very careful if you drink Adrenochrome Cola.
Sis, hallo?
11.
Bestuur zeker wegen them.
Joi, iets niet joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
And we're live with another episode of the Moped Outlaws. Today, we are pleased to have our guest, Mila Maxwell, author of Finding Lady Baltimore. Someone who is beyond just an author, but a dog mom and someone in firefighting and all kinds of beautiful things about culture and human interests and relationships. I'm here also with my partner, Greg. And just to be clear with everybody, a little sleep deprived. So this is going to be a fun ride. Welcome, Mila.
Thanks for having me.
So if you don't mind my jumping right in, the gist of this book comes from your relationship with your sister, who is a younger sister with disabilities. I believe she has cerebral palsy.
That's right.
Okay. One of the realms that Mark and I really are very passionate about is with racial equity and these areas of unconsciousness that especially white privileged people and white privileged men at the pinnacle of it all just don't have any consciousness of. What would you say is an area in your life that it would be wise for us to be conscious of? Like, what are these areas of unconsciousness that people have in the realm of disability?
That's a heavy one, just because I think just because I grew up with a sister that has disabilities, people assume that I know everything about it, that I'm comfortable around it. But everyone's disabilities are different. And for me, I'll use an example. So she has both a mental and physical disability. So cognitively, she would be closer in age to my son, who's almost 11, than myself, who just turned 40. And, I'm used to her. I'm used to her quirks. I'm used to her speech impediment. I'm used to what makes her tick. But just because I know her doesn't mean that the next person that comes along with the exact same disability, I might not know them, because everyone's an individual, right? So I think that's a common misconception, is that just because I grew up with someone like her doesn't mean that I am an expert. And within families, I think, we're ourselves around her, we're comfortable around her. To a certain extent, there are still things that make me anxious with her, just because she's not able to vocalize, oh, my stomach hurts, I think I might be sick. What just happened over there really bothered me. She would never cognitively be able to say that or to have that conversation. So that still makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But yeah, everyone that has a disability, it does not fall into this one category of that person's disabled versus people that are maybe neurotypical fall into another category. We're all individuals, we're all unique. And I think that's a very, very common misconception.
I think that alone, like I just find myself always wanting to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And you bringing to the forefront everyone's individual, regardless of who they are. That's great to be reminded of.
And then on the flip side, too. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, on the flip side, you know, people that grew up like I did, and it's still hard for me to say this, even though I wrote a book about it, that we have needs as the siblings of these people. And as my parents could say, as the parents of people like Sarah, that these people have needs as well. And I think the sibling, especially where it was just my sister and I, so two girls, very close in age, obviously there's differences, whether they're obvious or not. But it was always something that the comparison was there, whether it was spoken or not. So I think people just thought, oh, Mila, she's always, you know, she seems happy. She seems to have her stuff together. Doesn't seem like anything really bothers her. And that could not have been further from the truth. I just kept it to myself because I saw my parents being, you know, so focused on my sister that I think subconsciously, when you're the sibling of someone with a disability, you hold back. You hide parts of yourself to keep the peace, to not make other people uncomfortable. Because Sarah, in the book, her name is Sadie. I fictionalize a lot of it. But Sarah, you know, there's certain things that she didn't understand. There were certain things that made her anxious. So we would always, you know, have private conversations, or I was subconsciously taught to not, you know, you don't say that in front of Sarah because it'll make her uncomfortable or it'll make her anxious. So I learned from a very young age to hide those parts of myself. And it's still something that I struggle with to this day, that I can be an open book, but with vulnerability and things like that, you can ask my husband, I deal with it on my own. I remain quiet. I kind of hide off from the world. I put up my walls and I deal with it by myself. So
when you think about that adaptation made to compensate in life and the recognition that inability to be vulnerable, what is that costing you?
What is it costing me?
Yeah, in terms of people and relationships. And
I think it goes both ways. If the wall is here, it doesn't allow the hatred, it doesn't allow the judgment, it doesn't allow the negative things, but it also doesn't allow the good things to come through either.
So have you built up any resentments around what was walled off?
I did, and I think those walls came crumbling down when the book came out. As I was writing it, I could start to feel them. I could start to feel myself sharing my story and being like, no, there is a story to tell here. And I think it can be relatable, whether you have a sibling or a family member with a disability or not. That it really surprised me that my father's friends that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s read the book and could relate to it, because it not only offers my perspective as the sibling, it offers Sarah's perspective, even though it was, and that was a big reason I wrote fiction, is because she can't verbalize these deep conversations that we're having. She might think them, and I like to think that she does in her own way, but I was never able to go to her and say like, hey, like when this happens, how does it make you feel? So that's why I chose to write fiction, so that I could highlight those things that I had seen, whether it's a handicapped washroom being used when someone needs it, accessibility things that she struggles with. So that was the reason that I wrote it, but it was very helpful. And those walls did start to come down because I was able to have conversations with my parents that I had never had. And as uncomfortable as it was, my dad and I have always had a somewhat strenuous relationship. And there was also a lot of resentments there. And after the book was written, I don't feel that anymore, because we had those conversations that had to be had as I was writing the book.
It sounds like it was really cathartic for you, and it gave you an opportunity to finally voice some of the things that you've been holding behind the wall. And I know that in the question I just asked you, very quickly your emphasis turned to Sarah. And what I'm really curious about is what you discovered about yourself in the process of writing, other than that you hold things back. Did you get a sense of what the loss was for you in holding things back?
I don't know if it was a loss now that I'm older and I can see it for what it was. I think it was, I used to think, oh, I'm such an angry person and I'm so easily frustrated and I'm so sensitive and it's such a bad thing. And as I was writing this, I said, no, I had those feelings because I just loved her so damn much. But at the time, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to feel it. I was also very empathetic. And that's something that I've had to learn to have boundaries on because I tend to feel too much. But that was something that I recognized when I was writing the book. I was like, oh my gosh, no, you weren't this horrible person that was easily angered or frustrated or was always down in the dumps. You just felt so much. And this was your boundary. This was how you protected yourself. You put on this mask of, you're tough and nothing gets to you. But that was, love was the thing that was kind of hiding underneath.
So
as corny as it sounds.
Well, in this realm, you became a mother and a wife, which are relationships that we hope love is a predominant element in. Do you think that this shift in 2022 when you started writing has shifted your relationship as a wife, as a mother?
Yeah, and I definitely think my husband Jeremy could agree on that. There's definitely been some shifts. And I think I would expect him to share things that maybe he wasn't sharing, but I wasn't doing it either. So I was asking for things that I wasn't giving. So how fair is that? And I think what started all of this was when I became a mother. I noticed patterns. I noticed things that I didn't like about maybe the way I was raised, the way my parents were raised, the way I was starting to raise my son. And I said, no, I don't like this. And it caused a lot of anxiety. And I mean, the book only came about when my son was 8, 9, 10, 8-ish years old. But yeah, everything's changed.
Did you have any concerns when you were thinking about becoming that some risk was present, and how did that color your thinking in that realm?
100%. I always worried, and it's not that I was afraid that I wouldn't love my child if he or she were born with a disability. I think I had just lived it for my whole life. I saw the struggles that my parents went through, whether they were quiet or not. I observed it, whether it was from a distance or whether I was in it. But, I saw the stress of the physio. I saw the stress of having to drive 3 hours to a different hospital for surgery. I saw the anxiety in my sister whenever she had appointments. I was in the same school as her. So luckily we grew up in a community that was very accepting. There was never any bullying. There was never any teasing. I think I would have actually really seriously hurt someone if I ever did witness that. But no, there was never any of that. And we were very fortunate in that way that she grew up pretty much alongside of me. She just had an EA. She had a teacher's aide. So she was able to do regular school until about high school. And then there was a special class for her and kids with particular needs. But yeah, it was interesting.
So there's a kind of courage that goes with breaking down walls and dealing with the social implications of what you're talking about. How do you think that informs your relationship with firefighting? And what kind of things grew out of your ability to navigate these complex emotional landscapes that allowed you to enter into this part of your life that is related to firefighting?
Yeah, and I think growing up, I was always this protective, I don't want to say hero, but I had this mentality of I am able-bodied. I am capable of helping people that may not be able to help themselves. And firefighting it was weird how it came about. A couple of my friends were on the department, or people that I guess were friends now, but we knew each other, but I had sold a business and I was missing being out in the community. And I remember thinking, maybe I'll join the fire department. I had seen a sign on their lawn one day. I was walking our other dog and she stopped to use the bathroom, and there was a sign for recruitment. And I said, that might be interesting. I'd like something, not desk jobby, more physical. And the very next morning, our neighbor's house, I think 2 or 3 houses down the road, caught fire. And I was getting my son ready for school, and I said, you stay inside, I'll be right back. So I ran down and was able to kind of help the family. I brought them over, and this guy that I knew was there, and I said, I think I'd really enjoy this. And he's like, well, come sign up. And I signed up that day, and that was 3 years ago now. And I never looked back.
So you became an author and a firefighter, like in the same realm.
Yeah, the same summer. There was something going on in 2022, and I try not to look for stuff. If it's obvious and it hits me in the face, I notice it. But it was the year 2022. The civic address for the fire station is 22 Maple Avenue. And the house that burned down on our street, or not burned down, but their deck caught fire. It ended up being fine. Was 22 Elliott Drive.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I was like, what the heck was going on in that span of 3 months? I don't question it, but there was some sort of growth or some sort of higher power.
Okay, so that's what because I saw in an interview, you said you woke up with, in essence, an epiphany of this book. It just sort of overtook you, and you've touched upon your empathetic nature, and you just are, said about something higher. And if you don't mind my saying live, and we could cut it off, you're dressed for a funeral. So here's this realm of spirituality. And I'm wondering, do you consciously have a connection with that realm of life?
I'm not religious. We used to go to church as kids, but I am very open to signs and different things like that. And I don't believe in coincidences. I think everything happens for a reason. But yeah, that night I was falling asleep, and my husband, I took journalism in university. I've always liked writing and creativity. And he always used to say, you should write a kid's book. And I said, what would I even write about? And we were joking one night as we were going to bed. And I said, would I write erotica as a joke? And he fell asleep, and I got this idea in my head. It was a sentence. And this is not the character name that I use, and I have no idea where the name Martha came from. But it was basically, when Martha was 17 years old, her entire life flashed before her eyes, except it wasn't her life at all. It was that of her younger sisters. And I was like, holy shit, that's a book. And it was this full body, I don't know. I got tingles, I got chills, and I was like, I need to write this down. So I wrote the sentence down, went to sleep, and the very next morning I started writing. And it went into many different directions before I found the path or the actual narrative. But I was like, this is really cool.
Has your sister the cognitive ability to know this book has been written? And
yeah, she knows about it. Someone's reading it to her. And it was really funny because they're about 6 hours away. I'm in New Brunswick and they're in Nova Scotia. And people back home would say oh, Sarah, I hear Mila's writing a book. What's it about? And she'd go, me. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But I should preface too, a couple weeks before I got this idea for the book, I had gone home with my son. My husband was traveling for work, and I had gone to visit my parents for a week. And my sister, as sisters, and my sister and I got in a stupid fight about something. And afterwards, I don't know if it's because I was a mother and I think I should know better, but I think when we go home or we're in similar or familiar situations from our past, we tend to revert back to the age when we used to visit that place. And my sister and I got in this very trivial fight about something, and she left and she was fine. But I felt so embarrassed. I said, my son heard this. He's 7 years old in the tub. And here my sister and I are fighting about something idiotic. And anyway, my mother drove her home. She lives in a home with 3 other people that's staffed 24/7. And I was just stewing in the sunroom, and Mom said, "What is going on?" And I basically spewed out, and I'm not one to like cry and be very emotional. And I let it all out. I said, "I hate myself when she's around. I feel like I'm not good enough for her. I feel like I should be better, more mature, all of these things." And Mom looked at me, and she could have easily said, "Yeah, you really should be." But she said, "You have such high expectations of yourself, and you always have." And she said, "She doesn't expect that of you. If she calls you, you don't have to answer if you're busy. If you come visit and she comes to visit you and you have something to do or someone to go see them." She said, "You don't have to have these unmatchable expectations on yourself. She doesn't, we don't." So she's like, "Just relax." And I think when we had that conversation, it peeled back enough layers to be like, oh, like there's a story here.
Right.
And the next night I got home and I said, "I'm going to call Sarah." And usually I would have just let stuff like that slide. I said, "She doesn't get it. She doesn't care." And I said, "Stop treating her that way. Stop assuming she doesn't understand and show her some damn respect." So I called her up and I said, "Look, last night you and I got into a stupid fight about something. And I said, I should have asked you first before I gave away, I think my son wanted like this bracelet kit or something that was hers. And she had left it behind when she moved out. Anyway, I said, I should have asked you first. I said, that was not right of me." And she said, "Yeah, cool, whatever. How was your drive?" so it was, I think the apology was more for me than her, but it was basically, me showing up for her in a way that I had never done before and showing her some respect and being like, she might not be able to reciprocate that she's understood that, but on some plane or some level she is, and I need to start treating her better.
Yeah, it's funny. What's coming to mind is this imagery, like your sister's the bodhisattva in the relationship. She's the enlightened one living in the now. You're the one on this path of learning, and she's there for you.
She's always known that. She's always known what love is, and she's known not to worry so much what people think. And she's always had a very simplified version of life, and she has no choice, but she knows what's up. And I was the one that should have been paying more attention and learning from that. So yeah, it's been very enlightening and very eye-opening for sure.
In some ways, you had this breakthrough, as you said, in 2022. What other relationships have shifted? I mean, and how do you operate differently now? How do you keep the wall down?
I think I've brought some walls down and I've put others up, because I think in the past I was such a people pleaser. I was just letting people not take advantage in a bad way, but I was so used to giving to other people that I was not putting myself first. And I've learned to be my best company. I've learned to lower my expectations, but not in a bad way. Just be, okay, things change, and stop taking things so personally. And yeah, this has been probably my loneliest summer, but not in a bad way. Like, I'm busy with book things. I'm busy with the 2 dogs, my son's baseball. And I miss my friends, and I should probably reach out to them a bit more, but it's, I've learned to be a little bit tougher, but in the right way, if that makes any sense.
Oh, totally makes sense. The boundaries are the key to good health, because boundaries then, when you have healthy ones, enable you to be more potent when you decide to be generous with people. Mm-hmm. And I still witness this service ethic in you. And what I heard when you were speaking was the idea that your expectations may have been lowered, but your standards haven't.
Yes.
So what's scariest about being a firefighter?
You would think it's the fire, but it's not. We live in a very small town, so car accidents, I think, are my least favorite, because you never know when you pull up to a car accident if it's going to be someone you know. So those, I always pause an extra breath when I see that come through on the pager. Then I'm like, all right, let's go do this. But knock on wood, so far, I've known a couple people that it was just a minor fender bender, but nothing too serious. But yeah, the fires are they're scary, but in a really kind of awesome way.
Did you see the movie Backdraft? I think it's from the 80s with Kurt
I've
Russell.
heard of it.
It had they're two brothers who are firefighters. You actually might appreciate it because it's about brother relationship, like sibling relationship. But part of it is this aliveness of fire, like the life of fire, and these sort of enamored relationships the firefighters have with fire.
Yeah, we had gone to one. It was early Christmas morning. It came in as a chimney fire. So I thought to myself, oh, I'll be home in time for Santa. And luckily my son is old enough. But we got there and we're like, this is not a chimney fire. This is the house is on fire. And it was really creepy because it kept moving. And little did we know it was an older house. The dynamics of it, like we thought we had it out in one spot and it would show up in a different spot. And it was almost traveling behind the walls essentially. And I remember being in this kind of rounded staircase in the center of it and looking at one of my fellow firefighters and being like, okay, we should put the hose over here. And I looked over to my left and it was right there. I was like, okay, like we had to shift constantly. We were there for hours because it had a mind of its own.
Anger is like fire.
Go ahead.
What's that?
Anger is like fire in that way, right?
Yes, it is. But I've learned that anger is not always a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. How have you learned that?
By being angry.
Right? It's the repression of it that's really causes the big problem. And there's a way to process it that's damaging, and then there's a way to process it that's got some maturity to it that's actually very helpful and relieves everyone.
I always thought that I wasn't supposed to show those emotions, right? I always thought I will be happy and always be content and don't let things bother you. And it's like, you can let things bother you. There's just a way. Don't wait so long to get it out. And do it in a way that's not going to terrify people. So I had gone to talk to someone when my son was really, really young. And I said to her, I hate when I get frustrated. And she said, you're a human being. Of course you're going to get frustrated. And she said, if you show your son that you get frustrated sometimes, it allows him to feel more human. And I think that was something I struggled with when I was growing up because my mother, God bless her, she is the most stoic, calm, level-headed woman I have ever met. And I think I heard her yell twice in my entire life. And I think I was striving so much to be like her. And I said, I'm not really like her. I am in a lot of ways and hopefully the good ones, but I'm a lot more like my dad. That's, he feels things, he's emotional, he's passionate. And I always saw that as a weakness and I didn't want to be like him. And now that I'm 40, I said, you know what, I'm really like him. And that's why we always butted heads growing up. That we were so similar and I didn't want us to be. So I had to learn to kind of just go with it and be like, no, he has really awesome qualities too. And he's the reason that I am so driven and motivated and multi-passionate, I will say.
Multidimensional. Is it okay if I ask about your husband's emotional intelligence? Does he resemble your father more or your mom?
He would laugh at this question because we talk about it all the time. I always call him a robot. I'm like, could you have some sort of emotion, please? Because he's so neutral. I would say he's closer to my mother in an emotional depth. But I think he's learning and he's done some not coaching, but he's explored it, I'll say. Because I said to him, like, dude, like, you got to give me something here. And it's still probably the main point of our arguments. But yeah, I think him being that rock or that kind of stoic presence allows me to feel more. And we've gone to couples counseling a few times, just not that there was anything really wrong, I said, just go talk to someone and have a mediator and get some stuff out in the open. And he said to her, he said, I think Mila expects me to feel as deeply as she does, but I never will. He said, he's more like this, whereas, and I don't want to sound like I'm I'm a crazy person, but I feel happiness very strongly, but I also feel sadness very strongly. So I have to watch myself with that, because it can overtake me. So I've learned over the last few years to be maybe more neutral.
Got it. Emotionally sober is the word I like.
Yeah. I think sometimes I think numb, and I'm like, I don't like that, because I still feel. I've learned to not let it overtake me, whether it's positive or negative.
Oh, what a beautiful story. I want to tie back to something that you kind of said as an aside. And I'm going to ask this question in maybe sounds like a funny way, but on a scale of 10, with 10 being, oh, I really want to do it, and 1 being, I have almost no interest in doing that, what's the likelihood that a book of erotica is something in your future?
Probably a 1. It's so funny because I've been with my husband now for 22 years. He's like my one and only. I was so shy about that stuff in high school, but I was like, oh my gosh. And even now my husband's like, Mila, like, we've been together 22 years, like, relax a little.
I've seen
But
it all.
I don't know. I think if I ever did, I would have to be under a pseudo, like an alias or a pen name, because I would think constantly, my parents are going to read this. My parents are going to read this. My parents are going to read this. So maybe someday, but it would have to be, it wouldn't be under my name.
Now, did I get it wrong when you told the story? Was it him that said, is it going to be erotica, or was it you?
It was him. He was just kind of like, well, he asked about the book, and I was the one that was joking. Yeah. It was extra funny because I'm very modest. And I said, what would I even write about? Erotica? Like, give me a break.
Right. Right. The joke being it was a children's book, and an erotic children's book.
An erotic children's novel, yeah.
Well, that went way over my head at the time. Yeah. Thank you for making me feel weird.
Well, that's so interesting to me, because we're talking about some very personal things and realms that are often realms of discomfort for people, such as disabilities. One of my friends has Huntington's. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And,
yeah.
Okay. So the past few years, his movements have been noticeable now. And there's times in public where, for myself, I just have to take a breath and go, this is how it is. Like, people are looking, and just chill,
Yeah, I can relate to that, because I think that's what was really hard. One of the elements that was hard with Sarah was the looking. I'm very, like I said, I'm modest. I don't like drawing attention to myself. I don't like, I dress in a certain way that is not going to draw too much attention. I would never wear something super revealing. Even today, I went for a run earlier today, and I was wearing these kind of spandexy shorts, and I said, they were kind of riding up, and I was kind of feeling self-conscious. I'm like, would you just relax? You're wearing more clothes than most teenagers wear right now, like, chill. But that was a big thing for us. I hated when people looked at her, and I had to learn. I said, they're curious. Not everyone's looking at her and judging her and thinking, ugh, what's wrong with her? They're curious. Of course they're going to, if she, they hear her crutches, they're not used to hearing that. So they're going to turn and look and see what's going on. So I had to relax a little bit with that and not care so much what people think. If she's loud, if she's causing a scene, if she's just being herself, that's okay.
This brings up this idea of what we do with our gaze, especially men. There's this thing referred to as the male gaze, being somewhat intrusive and somewhat can be oppressive in some instances. And people don't realize that where they look, there's energy that flows there. People feel that, right? And so your modesty, I think, is the result of not wanting to feel put on the spot or having to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. And without necessarily causing any issues with your firefighting team, there's a misconception, I bet, that firefighters with a woman firefighter are kind of locker room-ish and a little bit over the line. What's been your experience around sexism and your firefighting career?
I'm lucky in that there hasn't been a whole lot that I've noticed. I heard some things, and there's this one guy who's a bit of a, I won't say too much because people will listen to this, but a bit of a troublemaker, kind of a bit of a rumor spreader. And, there's been some things that I've come to realize that were said, because I'm quite close to a couple of the guys on the department. And yeah, I think people know that I'm tough, that I will deal with things, that I'm not afraid to have hard conversations. And if they would ever mess with me, they'd probably regret it.
Got it.
I hope so anyway.
Yeah. Well, they'll find out.
They'll find out the hard way. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Does that make it hard in an environment where you have to be completely trusting of your team when you're at risk fighting a fire?
Yeah, it does. But in the end, I think we're all mature enough to be like, okay, this is someone's house, or we're rescuing someone from a car. Like, it's funny how it's almost a boredom thing. Like, a few of them work there, and I don't know if they're just bored and they start rumors, but I think, I'd like to think anyway, that when shit hits the fan and we really need to work as a team, that we will. But like anything, like any organization, there's always troublemakers. There's always different levels of maturity, different levels of education, different, backgrounds. So yeah, I've had to learn to put my guard up there a little bit, which I have been doing, and learn who I can trust and who I really can't. But no, I don't think anyone would make a pass or anything. I've never felt that way at all. It's more of the just maturity level, I guess. But yeah, no, I don't think anyone doubts my ability, if that's another question that was kind of hidden in there. I think I'm in decent shape, and I can handle most things. Although I tried to drag a deer off the road a couple weeks ago and I couldn't. I was a little embarrassed about that. I had to have one of the guys come help me, but.
Got it. So I had a question, but it just left me with that remark.
With the deer?
No, the deer was what made me think of something else. I lost my question when you explained the deer. It'll come
back. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm a little sleep deprived, maybe a little oxygen deprived right now.
Oh, I got a quick question because I just was going to joke about, well, I have some crystal meth I could give you. So are in the area you're a firefighter in, are drugs an issue?
Yes. And I mean, we'll get called to medical rescue calls sometimes if the ambulance isn't able to get there on time. I luckily have never seen an overdose. I've heard of them, but yeah, it's there is a seedy underbelly to where I live, and there seems to be a lot more homelessness, a lot more drugs, a lot more needles being found in the parks and things like that. It's a very small town, but still, no one's immune to it. It's everywhere.
Has this given you a comfort to show your son that side of life, not to physically take him there, but to let him know this is out in the world?
Yes. And I think growing up, and I think my parents did it lovingly, but I think they sheltered me to a lot of things that may have been out there. Whereas with Bennett, we travel a fair bit as a family. Like, we went to New York a couple months ago and we saw quite a bit of homelessness. And, we talked to him and said, not everyone lives like we do. Like, we're very fortunate. Like, we don't have a mansion. We have a very old split level house for nothing. It's nothing fancy. But I said, we are so fortunate to have what we have, because not everyone has it. And I said, even in your class or in your school, there are people that, may not have breakfast this morning, or maybe their parents didn't even get out of bed because they're addicted to substance. It's you never know what someone is dealing with. You never know. And it's like, I said to him, my motto with him, and hopefully no one judges me for this, but my motto with him for a long time, ever since he was young, was, you do no harm, but you take no shit. So I said, if someone is bullying you at school, I don't want you to necessarily take it, but you have to ask yourself, why is this person acting this way? There must be a reason. That maybe they're jealous of you, or maybe their situation at home is really not awesome, and they see what you have and they think, oh, lucky him, or we're gonna pick on him. So I've always been very open about those things, to say things are not always as they seem, and you have to be sensitive. You don't have to take crap, but you have to be sensitive to what other people might be going through.
I think we're probably going to title the episode that. My question came back.
Ooh.
So the idea is, with your experience with your sister and the experiences that we see in challenged people who become addicted, it occurs to me that the idea of neurotypicality is really the weird thing. We're all neurodivergent.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you concur with that.
I love that you said that, because I think, like you said at the very beginning, that we like to compartmentalize. We like to fit people into categories, whether it's disability, whether it's your gender or lack thereof, right? We're learning that there's this fluidity now, that we don't necessarily fall into a specific category, and that just because someone has a disability doesn't mean that they're not capable of great things. And we need to kind of peel back those old ways of thinking to say, that person, and I hate these words, the R word, and words like he's an invalid, or, right? Everyone has something to contribute, whether it's directly or indirectly. And I think it's something that we are so used to wanting to put in a category that we need to just kind of let those categories go and say, no, he's a human being. She's a human being. She's a person. That's it. Nothing else. No labels, no category, none of that extra shit.
And that requires of us the kind of compassion you're teaching your son, which is to pause and ask the question, what is this person's experience in front of me before I react to it?
Yep. Yeah, like that person chooses to have blue hair. Good for them. As long as it's not hurting me, then I'm cool with it. Wouldn't be my choice, but hey, you do you.
Right.
No, you don't have blue hair, do you? No? Okay, good.
I don't have any hair.
Mine does have a purplish tint to it. That's a different story. But even like with tattoos, some people see tattoos and they're like,
rebel.
Right. Yeah. Troublemaker.
Right.
Well, that's not too far off with you, Greg.
Okay.
We're both troublemakers. That's why we're outlaws.
Yeah. We do like that outlaw ethic. What is if you don't mind, the story behind the tattoo underneath your watch?
Oh, the flowers. So yes, I had a business, and the person behind this business, it was a franchise, a nutrition franchise that I will not name because I'm very professional. He and I, towards the end of it, were not seeing eye to eye, and he was a little bit of a bully. And I think when I sold the business, I was like, screw it. I got a tattoo. I cut my hair, like not short, but like short. And it was almost like a rebirth. And yeah, there's 3 flowers. There's lavender, a sunflower, and some wildflowers. And I just really liked the meaning behind those 3 things. And I said, screw it. I'm getting a tattoo. And I did.
So what's the meaning?
I'd have to look through it again, because it was it's on my phone, which I'm on right now. But it was these 3 things, and it said something about sunflowers, and there's a meaning behind them, and then lavender, and then the wildflowers basically was the bigger one, on how you grow where you're planted. You grow where, with the situation you're presented in.
And are those plant essences behind you?
They are. They're more decorative. I don't really use them a whole lot. I used to. But yeah, it's like, oh, this smells nice. I'll throw it in a diffuser. But I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it's going to completely heal me from head to toe, right? If I have a cold, I might throw this one in. If I have a pimple, I might throw one of those on. But
so you really are a spiritual woo-woo person, and you're just refusing to wear the cloak.
Kinda, yeah. Like I think in a lot of ways I am. Like I'll take my shoes off outside and I'll walk around barefoot. I'm like, oh, I'm grounding. But yeah, I'm not very pushy about it. I just do my own thing.
Isn't that great? Wouldn't it be so much more pleasant if people didn't need to proselytize so much, and they could just be in their experience and love their experience without having to tell us that we need to have that experience too?
Yeah. Like if I'm stressed, I'll go walk in the woods. I don't need to tell Facebook about it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So, as you have had this experience of writing a book and self-publishing it, what kind of sales are you getting? What's the business experience been like of that?
It's been very surprising. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really have expectations, and I did that as I think a protection thing. That everyone wants their work to succeed, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't want my book on a bestseller list. But I'm aware that it takes time. I'm aware that I have to do the work, which is what I'm doing this summer. But yeah, I think I've sold about 100 copies a month since it launched in April. So I'm probably up to close to 500. And it launched on April 15th. My book launch was out of this world. I could have never imagined that many people. And I think that goes back to me having owned a business in town and setting up roots here and being a part of the community and knowing people through different business ventures that I've been through and different groups that I'm a part of. But I think there was about close to 80 or 100 people at my book launch. And yeah, it was surreal. And I wasn't prepared because, when people sign on to like this Facebook event, they might say going, but they're not going. And they might say interested, but they're actually going. So I said, oh, I'm thinking like 60 people. And the room was set for 77 and it was standing room only. And it was one of the best days ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What did how did you come to the Finding Lady Baltimore as the title?
So originally the title was called The Blue Suitcase. And I said, that is so incredibly boring. And and this is a bit of a spoiler, but not really, because the cover of the book has a suitcase on it. And I would show you, but it's in my office. But when I was trying to describe the suitcase, I said, modern suitcases have zippers. They have all these extra features, but I said, I need this to be an older suitcase. So I just typed up vintage blue suitcase, and blue being one of my favorite colors. And this Lady Baltimore suitcase, it's a brand out of the States, it came up. And I said, oh, that's just what I had in mind. So I used that picture on Google to kind of help me describe what the suitcase looked like. And once the book was done is actually when I got the idea for the story. I said, I'm changing that placeholder title to something a bit more intriguing. And yeah, that's how I came up with it.
Brilliant.
Got it. So you're living near the U.S. border. Is that correct?
Yeah. So New Brunswick is bordered by Maine on two, I think, different borders. So if you go towards Woodstock, New Brunswick, you'll hit Maine. And if you go past St. John, New Brunswick, close to St. Stephen, you'll hit Calais.
How has your relationship with your U.S. neighbors changed in the last 6-7 months?
Well, we went to New York, so we had talked about not going, and I will answer this not knowing how you feel, but we still went. And I said, you know what? He is not going to change the way that I live. I might be more apt to buy more local things, which I think is a benefit. I try to buy Canadian. I try to buy locally as much as I can. But I said, I'm not going to travel because you're doing these things. So we went to New York. We had a fantastic time. Everyone was pleasant. There was no talk of him and his funny little sidekick. No, it was great.
So my reason in asking is to not actually center him, but to actually see if there's a perceptible difference in your community, the people that you're close to, right? Because there is a lot of cross-border interaction. And where I think the influence is really important is how do we do or not do continue the beneficial, warm-hearted relationships that make things so much better. I'm wondering, what's your experience been? Have you seen anything, experienced anything yourself with your local community that's been, problematic or difficult?
No, not particularly. Just that there's no American liquor on the shelves.
Got it.
Which is a benefit, because then the New Brunswick and the local Canadian ones get more attention, which in my opinion, where we live, they should.
So what kind of cocktail would you want? Like if you're going to order
wine.
a cocktail,
Okay.
like wine?
I like wine. I like wine, and I also like whiskey.
All right.
Got it.
Like a Moscow Mule, like set me up.
Oh my God, that's my sister's drink when she used to drink Moscow Mule. That's like dessert.
Oh, it's delicious. like burns your throat going down, settles your stomach. It's fantastic.
All right. Are you in a fishing community?
I grew up in a fishing community in Nova Scotia. That's where if ever you read the book, it is set in a fishing community. But the where I live now is prominently farming. We're actually our nickname is Cowtown.
Was that book a perfect storm based on where you grew up? Were those folks from that area?
Yeah.
You know that? Yeah. That book has stricken a keen respect for the ocean in my being.
Oh, sorry. What book are you referring to?
A Perfect Storm.
Oh, the actual Perfect Storm. I don't know if I've read that. I'll have to look that up when we're done. I'll have to look up that book and that movie that you mentioned. But no, whenever people think of where I'm from, they think of the Scarlet Letter.
Ah, okay. Well, that's a whole different topic altogether.
Yes.
So we mentioned another book, and I contextualized it by asking whether it would be erotica, which was kind of limiting. But do you think you could write another book, and what would that be like for you? And what do you think would be the subject, if any?
I would love to write another one. And a lot of people have come up and said, we need more of this. We need there to be a sequel or another installment of this series. So I don't know, like anytime I get an idea, I'll send it to myself. I'll email myself and think, oh, what about this or what about that? So nothing in the works right now. I'm having a lot of fun with the marketing piece of it. And I have a book signing at one of the bookstores in Fredericton tomorrow. So I'm just having a very busy summer of podcasts and radio interviews and just talking about the story. And it was funny because when I originally I signed on with these two editors out of Ontario called Working Writers Co., just because I needed a bit more direction and I wanted someone that could not only read the manuscript when it was done, but actually read it as I was writing it and provide direction. And I remember signing on with them almost 2 years ago and saying, I'm not one for attention, but I want this book to have attention because of the stories and the themes that it covers. And that's been really hard for me because I found it a little bit draining that I have to put myself out there, but I have to remind myself, you're not putting yourself out there. You're putting your work and your book out there. You're just the provider. So that's been a little challenging by times where I'm a social introvert, but I like my own company. So I have to be careful of what I book and how much I book and my schedule, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
So sequel would be what the audience demands, but you're still open to anything else.
Yeah, and I think it would be along the same lines of the one that I've just written. I'm just not sure what direction I would go in, whether it would still be my perspective, maybe as an older person, not 17, but maybe, in my 30s and somehow fit the suitcase in that way. I don't know.
A prequel.
Yeah, I could actually. Could be my parents' story. Who knows?
Yeah. So one of the questions I wanted to ask earlier, but I didn't, and then we're going to start to wrap it up. But do you think that your sister is capable of having any kind of romantic relationships? And what are the challenges for her around experiencing something like that in her life?
Yeah, that's interesting you asked that. So I'll give an example. The day that my husband and I got married, oh my gosh, 14 years ago now. I look at the date because it's in 5 days. But I remember that morning being so excited and so happy, but also saying to my mom, and my sister was my maid of honor, we were helping her get ready. And I said to her, I said, she's never going to get to experience any of this. She's never going to, have her first love and get to get married and have kids and, lose her virginity and all those things, right? So that hit me hard, and mom said she doesn't think that way. And I'm lucky in a way that Sarah cognitively doesn't compare herself, doesn't think Mila has this and I don't. Mila has these opportunities and I don't. But yeah, that's something I think of often, right? It's like she's never going to get to experience any of that. And that makes me a little bit sad, but she doesn't seem to worry too much about it. Doesn't even seem to think about it.
Have you ever brought up with her, like opened that door of relationships, romance, asked her about it?
No. And I don't even know, like, if she were to think that way, would she go one way or another, right? I have no idea. But where she lives, it used to be 4 girls. And now I think there's 2 girls and there's actually a guy moving in. So that'll be interesting to see. So I'll have to chat with her about that to see how she feels. But I think where she lives in a small town, they all know each other. It wouldn't be a stranger to her. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to see what she might say about that.
Well, because what occurs to me is she was very cognizant of, you gave my thing away. You didn't even ask me. You just took it and gave it away.
Yeah. So, and that's an element for her of control that she might have felt out of control, that I went behind her back and gave something away that was hers, me thinking, oh, she left it behind, she doesn't want it. So to ask those conversations, and if she can't answer them, that's fine. But if she can, then it would be interesting to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, Greg and I have a question that we ask all our guests at the end of the show, and we're going to ask that. But before we do, how can people get the book? What's the best way to sort of connect with Finding Lady Baltimore and understand more of your story?
So the book is available on all Amazon platforms, whether you're in the States or in Canada or anywhere. And I'm on social media. So it's if you're on Facebook or Instagram, just search up Mila Maxwell author and it should show up. And I'm on LinkedIn and not TikTok yet. I have the TikTok app. I just have not taken the leap yet. It's kind of scary. Like, how much time am I going to spend on this?
Well, you know what they say is, if you open TikTok, the first thing you should do is share a video. Be a producer, not a viewer.
Okay.
That's the rule for TikTok.
And I think that's what's holding me back, is I like the quiet content. I don't want to open my phone and have, music playing on someone's vacation album. I hate that. Like, I just want to look at a picture and read something. I don't want noise. So to me, I'm like, oh, I have to create something. Like, oh, I don't want to do this. So I haven't taken the leap into TikTok yet.
Got it. Well, we'll put all of the socials in the show notes for the show, so that, and a link to the book. It's been real fun talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me so much.
I want to ask more questions, but we want to respect the time. And this last question really means a lot to us. It may seem somewhat lighthearted or frivolous, but it's not. We really, really are committed to this question because, of course, we have our own ideas about this, but we never ask that of ourselves. But we're going to ask you. So,
Go.
Greg.
All right, final question, Mila. Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. It depends on the day. I don't know, Eminem if I'm working out or driving by myself. But if my son plays it, I hate it because he always plays it too loud. But then, yeah, it would depend on the day. I know that's a horrible answer, but.
Oh, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah, that's
totally
okay.
So right now, today, what is it right now?
Foo Fighters today.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Mila, thank you very much for taking this ride with us, and all the best with your other rides and journeys you'll be on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Recording stopped.